Hey everyone, this is not good in Switzerland. Right now, what's going on? Authorities are preparing evacuation plans for an entire village because a mountain above it is literally cracking open. If you think, what is he talking about? We've heard that story before. Yeah, we heard it in Blatten and we all know what happened. And there is now a new village. The crack that we see, it's scary because when you hear the amount of rock debris mountain that could fall down on the village, it's huge. It's a giant fracture high in the Alps. It's growing every single day. And if this is collapsing, hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of rock and earth could crash into the valley below. 500,000 cubic meters, actually. That's what we're talking about. And this nightmare scenario that I'm telling you about doesn't end with a landslide. This is why this is so crucial, because if that mountain comes down, it could block a river, create a temporary lake, and then unleash flooding downstream. You also think now, well, that sounds like Blatten. Well, yes, guys, is this another catastrophe? That village that I'm talking about is larger than Blatten, if you see it. So for the people living in the village of Chippis, this all is not a theoretical danger anymore. It's not. It's a race between science and gravity. That's what we can say. So let's zoom in a little bit. What are the scientists watching right now and what is actually happening? So this is high in the Valais d'Anniviers region of the Swiss Alps. Zermatt is nearby, you see it. Geologists have discovered a massive fracture in the mountain slide. And they have given it a name. It's known as the Fios fault. So today that crack is already at it. It's mind-blowing. I don't want to say groundbreaking, how long that is. And I'll tell you in a second. Do me a favor. Can you give this video a like and a hype and share it with your friends? It helps my channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Okay? Thanks so much. 250 meters. This is how long this fault line is. That's almost 1,000 feet. So that is, or if we want to say, nearly the length of 3 football fields. This is how wide or long this is. That's what's cracked away from the mountain already. You see it in the image. But here comes the most unsettling part. It is still growing. It is growing right now. Measurements are showing us that the fracture is widening by about 2 to 4 millimeters every single day, like half an inch. Doesn't sound like much, but it is critical. We have a lot of rain coming now. We still have snowfall, but we might have melting snow and water, lubricant very, very soon. That soaked material on the mountain can bring this stuff down even faster because it's heavy. And again, on a mountain scale, if we look at that movement, that is a clear sign that the slope is doing something, that it's alive and that it's moving in the wrong direction, we have to say. So geologists estimate that as much as 500,000 cubic meters of earth and rock could potentially break loose if that slope fails. And if we see how big that crack is, well, I really think it's very likely that it does. 500,000 cubic meters. So imagine an entire mountainside is suddenly beginning to slide. And you don't really have to imagine it. We all remember the glacier collapse in Blatten that buried the village of Blatten, blocked the river, and created Lake Blatten. But here's where the story even gets more dangerous. The unstable slope sits above the Navicens River. It runs through the valley below. So if the mass collapses into that river, it could block the water completely, and that would form a natural dam. So water would start backing up behind the debris, temporary lake could form. And then If that natural dam suddenly fails, which it probably will, the released water could surge downstream, potentially flooding parts of the valley, including the village of Chippis, where about 1,500 people live. So that's why authorities are already preparing evacuation plans and reserving civil protection shelters in nearby communities. They don't want to have any loss of life, right? Thankfully, they evacuated Blatten in time, but they never thought that what happened in Blatten would really happen at that scale. It hit them by surprise. So I'm sure now they're even more careful. Because if that mountain, guys, we have to make it clear, accelerates, there may not be much time to react. Nothing, no time at all, in my opinion. And this is not just speculation, right? Again, May 2025, Blatten devastated. Millions of cubic meters of rock and glacier ice have collapsed. And that memory now hangs over every update that we're getting from the Valais region. Because when we hear that another mountainside is moving, we remember exactly what happened and what is possible. So where does this crack come from is the big question, right? What actually caused this new crack to form? Well, the answer may lie in flooding events that happened earlier, and I'm talking like years earlier. We had major floods in 2018 and then again in 2024, and they have damaged the riverbed below the mountain slope. So that riverbed had acted like a structural support for the mountainside, like holding it back up. And over time, there the ground began to deform. So the mountain essentially started like slipping downhill. And eventually, then the stress broke through to the surface, creating that enormous fracture that the scientists and us, of course, are now watching. And when the geologists looked closer, they found something else. The main crack is not alone. Let that sink in, guys. It is not alone. There's several secondary fractures that have also appeared in the surrounding area. So that suggests the slope may not move as one solid block. So instead it could break apart in multiple stages, which would be a better scenario, right? Not everything at once, but it could also have like a domino effect that within a few seconds, stage 1, stage 2 happens, right? So in fact, right now, the experts currently believe that if the collapse happened, it's more likely to occur in several successive failures rather than one giant slide. That would be possible, yes, and that's what they thought in Blatten, but that didn't happen. But again, even if it were like that, it wouldn't necessarily make it safer. Even a partial collapse could still send massive amounts of debris into the river, and that would already be enough to trigger the chain reaction that the authorities are so worried about, right? Blocking the river, the lake, collapse, and then flooding everything downstream. So, of course, you can imagine that because of that, that mountain slide right now is under current constant surveillance. The scientists are using instruments that measure the tiniest movements in the ground. Laser scanners are mapping the surface. The cameras 24/7 are watching the crack, and they have drones flying over the area every week, and I'm sure maybe every day right now. And also large trees on the slope have been cut down to reduce additional stress on the unstable ground. If that's a good idea, I don't know, but again, these trees, of course, it's debris that can block the river. So everything's being monitored, because if that movement suddenly accelerates, an alarm could be triggered. So what is going on with the residents? Well, life below in the valley continues. The residents of Chippis recently gathered at a public information meeting to hear from the scientists and authorities, right? And according to officials, the question most people wanted to have answered was very simple. How much time would we have to evacuate if the mountain starts moving faster? That tells you everything about the situation. The disaster hasn't happened yet, but people are already imagining the moment when it might. So today, this is the reality in the Swiss Alps, and not only in Switzerland, but almost 1,000 feet long fracture, tearing open a mountainside. Half a million cubic meters of rock could potentially collapse. For now, it's moving millimeter by millimeter, but everyone in the valley knows the same unsettling truth. Sometimes in the mountains, everything looks calm, and that changes in a millisecond. And basically right until the moment the mountain comes down. So I will watch this for you guys. If you want to know what happened in Blatten, gosh, I have a playlist. It's absolutely insane. Check it out. Subscribe for more. Click the notification bell. If you want to support the channel, fill me up with coffee. The link is in the description. Thank you for your supers. Hey, if you want to become a channel member, supporting channel member, click the join button for behind the scene videos about my private life and what I'm doing. Thanks. Shout out to everyone who's doing that. Thank you so much. And check out the videos here on the end screen. It's crazy. All over the place. Tornadoes in Illinois, in Indiana with hail. That it was never seen before. So click here in the end screen and I see you in a second. Bye-bye.